During a battle against a monster, Daniel ends up being eliminated and Jamie deeply regrets the loss of her boyfriend. When she realizes that there is nothing she can do to save him, the young woman takes her chainsaw to open the door and manages to escape. After leaving the hut, she comes across the police and is taken to the station to give evidence about the attack that took the lives of 4 young people. It all happened during a Halloween party and, as Jamie was the only survivor, the authorities suspect that she has some involvement in the case. In this way, the girl goes from victim to number 1 suspect and has to be interrogated by a detective who shows her the images of the 4 bodies that were found at the scene. All but Daniel were completely destroyed and 2 of them were found without heads. The investigator then asks Jamie to tell her side of the story about what happened. According to the young woman, on the evening of October 31st, she was invited by her boyfriend to go to the cabin of one of his college friends. Once there, Jamie realizes that Daniel's friends are weirder than she could have imagined and is startled when Velma locks the cabin door before revealing the real reason for bringing the group together that night. At that moment, the woman reveals a pentagram drawn on the floor and Daniel hands his friends a box containing the Eldritch Blade. The young man reveals that the artifact is more than 500 years old and says he has to return it to his other classmate the next day. After turning the symbols on the artifact and revealing the blade hidden inside, Velma hits the palm of her hand to summon the monster that possesses the weapon. Despite her boyfriend's insistence, Jamie refuses to take part in the ritual while everyone spills their blood on the pentagram. At that moment, Velma says that the young woman has a different role to play that night and attacks Daniel so that he can't protect her. The rest of the team then immobilizes Jamie while Velma prepares to strike at her heart, using the young woman as a sacrifice. However, before the woman could finish her attack, the monster she had summoned appeared and raked Velma's body with its claws. When she looks back, she comes across the creature and screams in despair, but ends up being eaten alive. When they see their friend being eliminated, Fred decides to run away, but when he gets to the door, he remembers that the cabin is locked and has his head removed by the monster. Terrified, Jamie crawls away in an attempt to go unnoticed, but Daphne is not so lucky and the creature devours her skull too. Seeing a phone on the wall, Jamie immediately calls the police for help, at which point she comes across a chainsaw in storage. When she realizes that her boyfriend will be the monster's next victim, the young woman decides to take action and uses the tool to send the creature back to hell. While Jamie is busy trying to cut down her enemy, Daniel takes the Eldritch Blade and stabs the artifact into the monster's back. After having his body pierced by the sword, the demon turns into smoke and disappears completely, but Daniel was seriously injured and ended up losing his life on the spot. After telling her side of the story, Jamie becomes a laughingstock to the police and is disgusted when she realizes that they don't believe her. The woman claims that other monsters like that are about to arrive in her world and, if nothing is done to stop them, all of humanity will be in danger. Upon hearing this, the policemen start laughing, but are interrupted by the arrival of Landry, who begins a new interrogation. As Jamie was the only survivor and the door was locked from the inside, everyone believes that she is to blame for the attack. In an attempt to get her to confess to the crime, the captain claims to know that the young woman didn't mean to hurt those people, but ended up doing so in a moment of complete lack of control. Due to the lack of evidence proving her innocence, Jamie ends up being arrested and shares a cell with Jenny and other girls who were arrested after causing trouble in the street. That night, Blair was having her bachelorette party with her friends at a 5-star restaurant, but Chelsea got the 3 of them kicked out. When they find out that Jamie has been arrested on suspicion of a terrible crime like that, Chelsea and Crystal decide to stay well away from her, as they realize that the young woman is acting strangely. Worried about what is to come, Jamie tries to warn the policeman and asks him to let her out, but Dennis tells her that the young woman is safe because she is inside a building full of police officers who are highly trained to combat any kind of threat. Just then, Melvin appears and reveals that Jamie has been arrested for eliminating 4 people with a chainsaw, which freaks Dennis out. The policeman didn't know the real reason why this seemingly harmless girl was behind bars, so he was trying to calm her down. However, now that he knows what she's done, Dennis realizes that Jamie could be dangerous and leaves to clean Casey's office, the coroner. At this point, the woman shows him some items that were found in the hut and among them is the Eldritch Blade. Upon analyzing the artifact, Casey realizes that it is a combination lock with 5 symbols, the problem being that there are 45,000 potential combinations. Then, while researching the item, the coroner discovers that the artifact came from ancient Mesopotamia, where people believed in the existence of a supernatural deity who would bring about the end of the world. That night, the employees of the police station get together to hold a Halloween party and everyone is invited, except Dennis. While his colleagues are having fun, the policeman has to keep an eye on the prisoners and ends up being tricked by Chelsea. The woman says that her friend isn't breathing and convinces Dennis to enter the cell. When the policeman is distracted trying to give first aid, Chelsea steals the bunch of keys and starts throwing them at her friends. During the game, the keys end up outside the cell and Jamie tries to get them. At this point, Dennis reveals that the artifact found in the cabin where Jamie's friends were eliminated is being studied by the coroner and will soon be decoded. On hearing this, Jamie despairs and claims that it was that sword that summoned the creature that attacked them in the hut. After a few hours trying to decode that lock, Casey decides to turn those symbols by hand and notices that some of them start to glow. Afraid that the coroner will unleash new demons, Jamie gets on the policeman's radio to call for backup and Larry says he's on his way. October 31st is Landry's birthday, so along with the Halloween party, his coworkers decide to prepare a birthday surprise. While the woman is cutting the cake, the lights start flashing and Casey is injured by the blade of the supernatural sword. Just then, the whole city is affected by an earthquake and Jamie realizes that it's too late, as the monsters have already been unleashed. When the earthquake is over, Dennis checks that everyone is okay and asks if anyone has been hurt, as all the lights have been turned off. As the police station is without electricity, the officer can't see Larry approaching through the front door and is startled. Realizing that the police station is without power, Larry tries to contact his team to ask for help, but he only hears a few screams. Without understanding what is happening, the man continues to try to communicate and is captured by the monster, which sneaks up on him. Seeing a pool of blood forming right in front of her, Jamie bends down to pick up the policeman's flashlight and sees the man being eaten alive. Terrified, Dennis starts screaming and the young woman orders everyone to be quiet, because it seems that the creature is blind. Since she is locked inside that cell, the young woman intends to go unnoticed by the monster, but her plan is interrupted by Jenny. All this time, the woman was asleep and wakes up just as Larry is being eliminated. Jenny screams in despair and is captured by the monster, which uses its tentacles to drag its victim's body out of the cell, cutting it in half. After the attack, Jamie picks up the bunch of keys and manages to free herself, but as she is opening the door to the cell next door, the keys fall to the floor and she has to grab an axe to defend herself from the demon. At this point, the young woman makes her first attack and loses her weapon. The monster then drags her into its mouth and the girl is devoured. However, she manages to retrieve the axe and destroys the creature, cutting its body from the inside out. After eliminating her enemy, Jamie opens the cell to free Dennis and the other prisoners. The plan now is to go after police reinforcements, as the radio signal has been cut. Afraid of encountering another monster like that on the way, Chelsea and Crystal decide to stay inside their cell and convince Ruth to stay with them. According to Jamie, the team needs to recover the Eldritch Blade to send those monsters back to hell. To increase his chances of survival, Dennis decides to free another prisoner, as he believes it will be an advantage to have him as an ally. As he doesn't know why Tinny was arrested, Jamie agrees to the decision, but as soon as his cell is opened, the criminal escapes with the axe. Immediately, Jamie and her friends go after him and, when they arrive outside, they realize that the police station is floating in the sky. It's a stormy night and Tinny is frozen with fear when he sees a gigantic monster approaching from behind. At that moment, the man feels paralyzed and ends up being devoured by the creature, which wraps its tentacles around him and takes him into its mouth. When he returns to the police station and finds a crater in the ground, Dara doesn't understand what has happened and calls for reinforcements. Terrified by the attack they have just witnessed, Dennis and the girls walk to the room where Landry's party was taking place and Blair finds Bob's body destroyed by flames. It seems that the man was burned alive, but Melvin, who had been hiding in the closet all this time, managed to survive. When the doors open, the policeman announces that the bar has been cleared and says that the other survivors can come out of their hiding places. Seeing the inmates out of their cells, Landry questions why they are loose and Dennis says that the trio are only alive thanks to Jamie. Traumatized by the attack he suffered that night, Walter recounts how terrifying it was to hear his colleagues' screams of despair without being able to do anything to save them. The man then hears some grunts and is hit by a large quantity of acidic goo expelled by the monster that is trapped in the ceiling. In a few seconds, the skin on Walter's face begins to detach from his body and he screams in pain. Seeing the monster approaching, the captain rushes to the door and orders everyone out of the room, but Fred ends up getting caught during the escape and can't get away. While his employee is being swallowed, Landry throws a packet of baking soda into the creature's mouth and causes an explosion that eliminates the monster. Now that the group is temporarily safe, Jamie explains how those bugs appeared and tells them that a blade appeared after Velma turned some symbols. As soon as the blade was stained with blood, the creature appeared and was only eliminated when Daniel changed the combination of the lock and hit the monster with the sword. So the team decides to go to the forensic laboratory to get the dagger and put an end to the nightmare. However, the captain decides to remain hidden in the room because, due to her age, she knows she will end up being a burden to her colleagues. After escaping from some monsters along the way, the quartet arrives at the laboratory and meets Chelsea and her friends. Afraid to stay in the cell alone, the trio decided to seek shelter in a safe place and ended up in the coroner's office. However, when he looks around, Dennis can't find Casey and, to make matters worse, the computer the woman was using to decode the lock's secret broke down during the earthquake. Luckily, the motherboard is still intact, so Ruth says she is able to repair the computer and restore the software that was running. While the young woman does her job, Jamie takes back the chainsaw she used to escape from the cabin while Dennis and Melvin equip themselves with swords to eliminate the monsters. The trio then set off in search of Casey, and Jamie asks Blair to stay in the lab to protect Ruth and the computer. As they approach the women's restroom, Jamie and the police officers hear Casey's voice and try to decide among themselves who will be the first to go in to talk to her. Since he has a crush on the coroner, Melvin offers to come in and puts on body armor to protect himself from a possible attack. When he finds her, the policeman is mesmerized by her voice and blindly follows her orders. At that moment, Casey kisses him without Melvin realizing that the woman has actually turned into a monster. Seeing his coworker in trouble, Dennis starts shouting to warn him, and, when he opens his eyes, Melvin realizes what a mess he's gotten himself into. At that moment, Casey tries to drag him into the monster's mouth, but her plans are interrupted by Jamie, who uses her chainsaw to attack her. When the woman is eliminated, Dennis rushes to get the Eldritch Blade and Melvin laments having missed every chance he had to get involved with her. Meanwhile, Blair and her friends hear a noise coming from outside the room and suddenly a hole forms in the door. At this point, Crystal bends down to check what's on the other side and ends up being attacked by small rodents. Hearing her screams, her friends run to help her free herself, but the creatures remove Crystal's head. The little monsters then enter the room and attack the other women they find there. While Chelsea and Blair try to get rid of the rodents, Ruth takes Jamie's call and reveals that the lock code will soon be decrypted. With Blair's help, the young woman gets rid of the little monster that was devouring the computer's cables and manages to print out the result of the correct combination. Just then, the three surviving girls run into the room where Landry is and the whole team reunites. When all the symbols of the Eldritch Blade are positioned correctly, the police station returns to Earth and goes back to where it was before. Relieved, the survivors celebrate their victory, but Jamie begins to act strangely. When she picks up the supernatural sword, the young woman reveals her true identity and attacks Chelsea with the weapon, piercing the woman's skull with the blade. After eliminating her, she spins another symbol and reveals that Jamie no longer inhabits that body. When she was offered as a sacrifice, the young woman had her body possessed by the Destroyer of Worlds, also known as the Mother of all monsters. The creature claims that the Eldritch Blade was the only artifact powerful enough to imprison it, and now, thanks to the team, it is free again. Landry then realizes that Jamie was telling the truth about the monster in the cabin. The only detail the young woman forgot to mention is that she was, in fact, eliminated by Velma and her friends. After that, the girl was possessed and the monster that invaded her body eliminated everyone with its claws, except Daniel, because the young man attacked her with the Eldritch Blade. In doing so, he suppressed the powers of the Devourer of Worlds and was eventually eliminated by a chainsaw attack. After Daniel altered the combination, the creature could no longer use the dagger, so it came up with a plan to regain its power. After setting up the whole scenario, Jamie called the police and asked for help, playing the role of the traumatized victim. In this way, she managed to manipulate all the humans around her and won their trust in order to regain power. Seeing Blair, her only real friend, about to be eliminated by Jamie, Ruth, who used to be a quiet and friendly girl, decides to react and orders the monster to free her friend. At that moment, Landry grabs the chainsaw and attacks Jamie from behind, but the wound heals quickly and the creature uses the tool to eliminate the captain. Jamie then opens a portal to bring more monsters into that world, and the survivors escape from the police station before they are taken back into space. When the cops were about to give up on saving the planet, Blair and Ruth decided to try a new strategy. The plan now is to take the Eldritch Blade and use it to suppress the powers of the Devourer of Worlds. In doing so, the monster will be trapped in the body of a mortal and then the team will be able to eliminate it. After getting into a car, the group hitches a ride on the power column that is coming out of the crater to reach the police station building. In a few minutes, they find the Devourer of Worlds sitting on a throne next to the cell and slowly approach him. When they realize that the creature hasn't noticed the intruders, Melvin tries to take the dagger, but Jamie wakes up just in time and gets up to face them. Blair then sneaks up and steals the supernatural sword, so the policemen hold the monster back so that the young woman can attack it. However, as Blair prepares to make the attack, the tip of the blade returns to the inside of the artifact and she throws the object so that Ruth can decode it. Suddenly, Chelsea appears and captures the young woman. While Blair runs after Ruth to try and save her, the cops face a flying monster full of tentacles. When she meets Ruth, Blair discovers that her friend is being held prisoner by Chelsea and Crystal, who have been recruited into the monster army. Then Blair challenges the pair to a duel and realizes that Chelsea has gained some fighting skills after undergoing the transformation. During the fight, Ruth manages to convince Crystal to give her the Eldritch Blade and tries to unravel the combination. At this point, Dennis and Melvin are trying to survive the monster's attack and use their swords to cut off its tentacles. With Crystal's help, Chelsea manages to immobilize Blair and strikes her fiercely. Seeing her friend being attacked, Ruth rushes over and manages to get the symbols in the right order. After hitting Crystal once again in the neck, the young woman passes the weapon to Blair and Chelsea has her body cut in half. After eliminating their enemies, the pair rush to the throne room and Blair is relieved to discover that her allies are still alive. Realizing that the girls are carrying the Eldritch Blade, Jamie is terrified and orders her monster to eliminate them. However, Blair uses the supernatural sword to chop up the creature and manages to eliminate it easily. She then passes the blade to Dennis and the group joins forces to hit the Devourer of Worlds. Just then, the group returns to Earth and celebrates when they realize that Jamie has been eliminated for good. However, when the four friends leave the building, the woman appears with a chainsaw to attack them and they realize that the Devourer of Worlds is still alive. However, she is now trapped in the body of a mortal and is eliminated by a group of armed policemen who were patrolling the site. The soldiers order the victims to get down and, after being hit by numerous shots, Jamie can't survive. Just then, Dara appears and congratulates the team on their excellent work. According to him, Commander Graham wants to talk to the officers who were responsible for that operation and invites them to join his tactical team. The commander reveals that his men have been trained to deal with supernatural threats, but have never had to face anything like what Dennis and Melvin faced. However, the pair still don't know if they will accept the invitation, as they don't want to have to fight supernatural creatures anytime soon.
Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.